Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I have been doing my pregnancy vlog every week, but I realise it can be a little bit samey when I'm talking about the same symptoms every week. So I thought something I haven't spoke about that actually I think will help a lot of people, or reassure a lot of people, or just speaking out about it, is a bleed that I had very early on in pregnancy. So start off with, I am currently 17 weeks and 6 days pregnant, so I'm 18 weeks pregnant tomorrow. Have to think about that these days with 2 kids already. Yeah, so I'm not going to make this a really long video. I'm not going to go over my symptoms because it's roughly the same. I just thought I'd talk about this bleed that I had, my experience and what happened. So I was 7 weeks and 4 days pregnant, and up until then I'd had nothing but a little bit of cramping between 4 weeks and 6 weeks on and off. I'd had cramping, which is quite scary because when you first get pregnant, my anxiety this time was sky high. It was higher than it was with Arlo and Amelia, and I just was worrying quite a lot about, I think it was because I was thinking, this is my 3rd baby. I've been so lucky so far. I was just sort of waiting for something to go wrong, and I really hate to say that, but I was, and so I was really worried about things. And I also was really thinking about, I hadn't had a scan at that point, 7 weeks, 4 days. I hadn't had a scan. We'd booked one in for when I was 9 weeks, but I hadn't seen the baby or anything. And up until that point, you really are sort of just overthinking everything and worried, and you just can't wait to see the baby, make sure it's in the right place, make sure it's okay. It's got a little heartbeat. Obviously the heartbeat doesn't start until I think it's 6-7 weeks. So I had this feeling, which is really weird, had this feeling that I was gonna have a little bleed. I don't know why. I didn't have it with Arlo, I didn't have it with Amelia, I didn't have not even a speck of blood with them two, like ever, throughout the whole pregnancy. But this time I just had this feeling. I was just waiting for something to go wrong, as I said. And I obviously really didn't want to be thinking like that because it's not very nice. But yeah, and it's really funny because I'd actually, before I got pregnant, I'd been exercising and I was using weights to do like workouts and things, which was fine. They weren't mega heavy. But when I got pregnant, I stopped just because I didn't feel great. And so I hadn't been doing that, and this one particular day I thought, oh, I'm just gonna pick up my lightest weights and just do like the smallest whatever I feel kind of workout. And I sort of started doing it, and it wasn't anything too strenuous, and I'm not saying this is what caused it, but I did a little bit of a workout. To be honest, it was mainly my arms. I can't even remember. It was about 10 minutes I was just lifting up these weights. Bearing in mind, I lift Arlo up, and have done since this day I got pregnant. I lift him up and he is heavy. Like, he's 2.5 nearly, and he is very heavy, well over what I was using 2.5 weights, or I might have even used my 5 kilogram ones, which are total 10 kilograms. So obviously he weighs way more than that, and I'm constantly bending over picking him up. So I don't think it was this particularly, but I did a little workout, blah, blah, blah. Went to the toilet, and when I wiped, there was a fair amount of blood. You couldn't miss it. Like, on the tissue, it was like covered. It was bright red. It wasn't pink, wasn't brown, completely red. My heart literally dropped. Like, I felt sick. I like almost went into like shock because I just thought the worst. And I didn't say anything to Josh at the time because I really didn't want to worry him, and I didn't want to overreact either because I thought I know that this can happen. So anyway, I did wiped it a few times, and it seemed to get less. It wasn't like filling up a tissue every single time. And then, so I did it a couple of times until it seemed to sort of be, I can't remember, but there wasn't much on the tissue by, I'd done 3 or 4 wipes. Anyway, I went upstairs and just sort of like sat down by myself and I had my phone. I think I may have just had a little panic. I'm not sure. I don't think I cried, but my heart rate and like my breathing, like I didn't know what to do. And I thought, right, shall I ring the doctors and just let them know? Because obviously that early on, if there is bleeding, and to me it was a significant amount, it wasn't like pink or brown, because I know implantation bleeding can happen up until like 8 weeks, so it could have been that, but that's usually, in my head I was like, it's usually brown or pink. This was bright red. Anyway, I came upstairs, went back down, I went to the toilet again. There was still some, but it wasn't the same amount that I got the first time. Anyway, rang the doctors, and like I remember the phone call, my voice was just like, hello, yeah, like trying to act like it was really like nothing, but I was literally dying inside, like, please, just, it was horrible. It's a horrible feeling. I didn't want to tell Josh because I remember thinking, I don't want him to worry and I don't want him to think the worst, because I almost felt like if it's not the worst, I don't want him to just sort of go into this like shutdown mode before we knew everything was okay, and it literally just been that little bit of blood. So anyway, my doctors said that the doctor would give me a ring sort of as soon as possible, which in that moment when I was waiting for her to call me felt like a week. It was probably only about an hour, which is still quite a long time, but I was really reassured by the fact that I think I went to the toilet a couple more times and wiped, and it eventually went into sort of nothing. There wasn't anything else sort of coming out really, and I had no pain, absolutely no pain. And I know that if you have pain, it can be another really worrying sign, especially if it's accompanied by blood. So I had absolutely no pain. So I tried, and I went downstairs eventually, and I said to Josh, like, just been to the toilet, had a little bit of blood, don't worry about it. I think I was trying to be like the one like, no, it's fine, like I know everything's fine, but he was sort of like, okay. I said, I've just spoke to the doctor, she's gonna ring me back. He's like, okay. And we sort of like didn't speak for like an hour until the doctor rang. I think we were both just sort of thinking the worst. I know he was, but we didn't want to say it to each other. So anyway, the doctor rang, blah, blah, blah. She said, okay, yeah, that's quite worrying, which didn't help. But anyway, she said, like, we're probably going to book you in for a scan. She asked me about the bleeding and about if I had any pain, and then she said, we're going to book you in for a scan. I just need to ring them and I'll ring you back. Sorry, so she rang me back. She said, I'll ring you back in 5 minutes. It did again feel like forever, but I was really reassured by, she said, after I'd said like I had no pain, the bleeding had stopped, she sort of said like, okay, that's reassuring, just let me know, ring us back if it starts again, or if it gets worse, or if you're in like agony, then ring us, or if it's out of hours, obviously ring, I think she said 111, but I can't remember. Anyway, she rang me back, said, we've booked you in for a scan in the morning. So yeah, they booked me in for a scan for the next morning. I kind of was like, at the time, oh, that's so long, like, how am I going to sleep? I need to know now. Like, I know obviously the next morning was really good because it could have been longer, but I wanted to just go down there that second and then just give me a scan and say everything's fine, or, you know, you don't want to think the worst. But I was like, yeah. So that night I don't think I slept very well at all. I wasn't thinking about it, but in the back of my mind I just, you know, you just worry, and it was just not very nice. It was, you want to know everything's fine, but again I was really reassured that the fact that the bleeding had stopped completely, and it hadn't started again. But then you kind of, every time you go to the toilet, your anxiety is like, every 2 seconds of sort of thinking, oh my gosh, am I bleeding? Do I need to go to the toilet and check? And it was just really horrible. Yeah, next morning I went to go to the hospital. Obviously I had to go by myself because of the virus. And Josh was actually going to work. We were both a bit like quiet and sort of like, okay, in our heads a bit, sort of reassuring ourselves like it would be okay, but let's not, nobody knows. You just can't second guess these things in pregnancy, like, yeah. I was trying to say to him, like, because he kept sort of saying the night before, what does it mean, like, what does the bleed mean, like, what did the doctor say and stuff. And I was kind of just saying, like, well, nobody knows, like, you don't know. That is why bleeding in early pregnancy is like one of, like, I wouldn't say I don't know if it's common, but it does happen. And usually if it's not a miscarriage, it's just something that they can't really explain, which is why it's sort of like, well, I don't know why I bled, but I did. Anyway, so we were sort of like, yeah, I dropped Josh to work. I was like, obviously I'll let you know what happens. Next morning I still hadn't bled, which was great, but I was so nervous getting to the scan because I was just waiting for them to tell me something was wrong. Or anyway, so I got to the hospital. It was the early pregnancy unit that I went to. I sat in there and it felt like I sat there for ages. You're literally waiting forever, felt like forever. And you go into this little room first, and she sort of went through a few things with me, like, you know, when my last period was and how heavy the bleed was and have I had any other bleeding and was I taking any medication, blah, 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 just like generic questions. And then she said, like, have you taken a pregnancy test since you found out you're pregnant? And I'm literally one of the people, I took about 20, and I had actually taken one, I think a day before the bleed, or maybe, yeah, I took it a day before the bleed. And when I had to bleed, I really didn't want to take another one because I was just terrified of it being a negative test, because that meant that it was basically going to be a miscarriage. So I didn't want to know until I had the scan. So I said, yeah, I've had a test. I took a test and it was positive still and quite dark. And she asked me about symptoms, and I said, yeah, I was still having symptoms, like my boobs were still, in the first 12 weeks, every day I'd be like, oh, do my boobs still hurt? And that was reassuring to me. And then you had to go back out, and then they called you in for a scan. I sat there for what felt like forever. It's one of them things you feel like everyone's getting called in before you. I think we were all there for the same reason, so all these women probably felt like. So I eventually got called in. My heart was literally racing. Sorry about this. Arlo literally just hurt himself and I just went down to see if he was okay. That was really gross though. And they don't show you, they turn the screen away from you at first to check everything before they show you. And she's like put it on my stomach, I was laying down like panicking, and she literally straight away turned the screen. She goes, there's your baby and it's got a little heartbeat, everything's fine. And I was just literally like, after she said that, nothing else went in. I don't remember what else she was saying. I was just staring at this little tiny thing. I was actually measuring, I found out that I was measuring a week behind. So it was actually 6 weeks, 4 days in that scan. But the baby did have a little tiny heartbeat and I could see it. And I was so reassured. And she said, like, it's just one of them things, basically, you know, we like in early pregnancy, you can have bleeds, could mean nothing. So yeah, she was just like, everything looks normal. I think she checked my ovaries and everything else. Baby was in the right place, had a heartbeat. So it was the most reassuring thing ever. And after that, like, seeing the baby, it was just the relief, the stress after the 24 hours, and then the relief of seeing the baby. And then like the excitement because you've seen your baby for the first time, but it's not in the circumstances that you wanted really. And it's so small at that point, it's just literally a dot with like a flicker of a heartbeat. They gave me a little scan picture to take, which is really sweet, especially when I compare it now to the latest one we had was the 16-week scan. Like, the size is just madness how much they grow. So yeah, that's it really. They said obviously if you have any more bleeding or you're really concerned, get pain, ring back. They gave me their number and said, like, ring us straight away, we're more than happy to see you, which was really, really reassuring. But I didn't have any bleeding whatsoever after that one episode, thank goodness, because it was terrifying. It was not nice. And I can't imagine for like those who do have bleeding and it doesn't turn out to be okay. Like, it doesn't always mean everything's okay, but it did for me, and I'm so glad that everything was fine. yeah, and just, I guess, take reassurance that it doesn't always mean the worst. But, you know, I'm glad I rang the doctors. I'm glad they were so good. They saw me and I saw the baby and everything was okay. So, yeah, I'm not sure if it's very common to have a bleed. My mum actually had said that she had a bleed, I think, with me and my sister. So for her, it was normal. But where I didn't with Arlo or Amelia, it panicked me, thinking something was wrong, but nothing was wrong. And yeah, I won't go on, but that's just something I thought might help anyone who's looking for reassurance, really. And the first 12 weeks are scary, are terrifying. For me, I luckily got to see the baby halfway through that, because after that I felt so much more relieved. But if you're somebody that doesn't have a scan until you're 12 weeks because you might not have bleeding or anything, I mean, in one sense I'm so like relieved everything was okay, and it wasn't enjoyable having the bleed, but then I got to see the baby earlier on. So yeah, the first 12 weeks are horrible. Your anxiety is just every little niggle. If you think your symptoms have gone, you're like panic. But yeah, we got through it, and since 12 weeks I don't feel anxious at all really. I mean, obviously there's a little bit of anxiety there, but yeah, it was a scary time. But baby's fine, baby's happy, baby's healthy. I'm feeling quite a lot of little kicks at the moment. And seeing as I'm not going to do like a full update, I will just show my belly, because at the moment it seems to be getting bigger and bigger by the day. And then I will let you all go. So this is, I'm going to say 18 weeks because I am nearly 18 weeks. So that is the belly. Yeah, I do feel quite big still, but I have noticed my bump's quite wide, though I was saying it looked quite a boyish bump. Actually, I think it's quite a girly bump. But yeah, that's about it. And thank you for all watching. Hope you take something from it. I won't bore you anymore. Goodbye, take care. Mwah. See you soon.